The online storm didn't start with a new scandal, it started with exhaustion, months of rumors, finger-pointing, and bitter arguments that had splintered the very people who claimed to care about the Whittaker family. But this time, it wasn't faceless critics or casual commenters stirring the pot, it was the creators themselves, Brian and Patrick, two men who had spent months claiming to fight for the family, now turning on the audience that made them relevant. For weeks, comments had been piling up under every post and video connected to the Whittakers. Some accused Brian of exploiting them for money, others mocked Patrick for inserting himself into their lives, and after the fiasco surrounding the car he bought for Larry and Betty, the criticism had turned venomous. Why would you give them a car in your name? You're controlling them. You're no better than the people you call out. The internet had grown loud, too loud. And so, Brian and Patrick decided to answer back, not with calm explanations, not with quiet reflection, but with defiance. Brian's post, "Mind your business." It started with a long Facebook post from Brian that read more like a sermon than a statement. His words were heavy with frustration, the tone sharp, almost parental. To be dead honest with everyone, it's nice to be concerned for the Whittakers. It's sweet and heartfelt, but at the end of the day, and I mean this with all due respect, it's none of your business. There are authorities and courts looking into everything. It's their job. I think it's sad that content creators and commentators have sunk to such a low, calling names, cussing, stabbing each other in the back. In the end, it's all about money, clicks, and ego. He went on, painting a picture of chaos, creators fighting each other instead of helping, audiences turning compassion into entertainment. There are 6 people who have lived through generations of neglect, abuse, drugs, incest, and disability, he wrote, and all of you have made it about yourselves. You've forgotten the humanity behind it. To some, his message rang true. To others, it sounded self-righteous, even hypocritical. After all, Brian himself had been one of the loudest voices in the chaos. Live streaming, posting, reacting, inserting himself into every development like a self-appointed spokesperson. Still, he wasn't wrong about the toxicity. The digital battlefield that had formed around the Whittakers was no longer about advocacy or awareness, it was about control, and no one embodied that control struggle more than Patrick. Patrick's video, "I've had enough." The video opened with Patrick sitting in his truck, the afternoon light pouring through the windshield. His voice was calm but tight, the tone of a man who'd spent too long reading comments that hit too close to home. "Everybody thinks they know everything," he began. "Everybody's got a college degree. All of a sudden I've got people telling me how to handle the car, how to deal with Larry and Betty, how to live my life. Let me tell you something, you don't know what you're talking about." He paused, shaking his head. "I don't care if you got a degree, a YouTube channel, or just a big mouth. You don't have to be a genius to have common sense, but it's common sense that if you're going to give the Whittakers a car, you give it to them. You don't hold it over their heads, and you don't use it to start drama." He insisted the title wasn't in his name. He claimed he'd done nothing but help, that he was tired of being painted as manipulative or calculating. "I'm gonna give the title to Larry," he said flatly. "If BJ takes that car and wrecks it, that's on her, not me. I've done my part. I'm fed up with the negativity. I've had enough." The video spread fast. Within hours, the comments section became a war zone. "Then stop posting about them," one person wrote. "You can't call people out for talking when you're the one putting it online," said another. But there were also those defending him. "Patrick's right," one supporter said. "He's been the only one trying to help. People are just miserable." The irony was thick. Both Patrick and Brian were telling people to mind their business, while publicly airing their frustration to tens of thousands of viewers. The very act of defending themselves had reignited the drama they claimed to hate. The audience fights back. If Brian thought his sermon would end the criticism, he underestimated his audience. One by one, creators and viewers began dissecting his post. Line by line, screenshots flooded TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook groups. A woman named Denise went live and read the post aloud, pausing after every paragraph to roll her eyes and laugh. "Oh, "Brian, sweetie, you want people to mind their business," she said, sipping her drink. "Then stop broadcasting your business. You can't have it both ways. You want clicks, you want validation. You're mad. People are finally seeing through it." Her live hit over 10,000 views. Then came the duets, the reaction clips, the video essays analyzing the Brian versus Patrick dynamic. The internet had turned their frustration into fresh content, the very thing Brian had accused them of doing. Even the Whittakers themselves became part of the commentary again. People began reposting old clips of Larry and Betty, quoting them, overlaying them with sad music, reminding everyone that the real victims weren't online arguing, they were offline surviving. The comments section turns cruel. Beneath Patrick's video, the tone shifted from frustration to mockery. Some accused him of being a wannabe savior, others dredged up his past mistakes, claiming he was only pretending to care. "You're doing this for attention," one wrote. "Nobody buys your good guy act anymore. Stop hiding behind charity." Another said, "You're exploiting them for clout." But not everyone was cruel. Some tried to bring perspective. "At least he's helping," a woman commented. "He didn't have to do anything. He could have walked away like everyone else." That was the conflict that kept the internet hooked. The moral gray zone. No one was purely good or bad. Brian and Patrick were both helping and hurting, both advocating and exploiting. They had become trapped in the same cycle that had consumed every person who tried to turn the Whittakers' life into a public crusade. And the worst part, they couldn't see it. Brian doubles down. 2 days later, Brian went live again. This time, he looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his voice sharp and defensive. "You all say I lie," he said. "You say I'm fake, but who's still out here trying to help me? You think I'm getting rich off this? Please, I don't even monetize half my videos. I'm doing this because I care." He paused, staring into the camera. "You don't know what it's like to be me right now. People calling me names, digging through my personal life, spreading lies about my family I tried to help, and this is what I get." Then, almost as if he couldn't help himself, he slipped into the same tone that always got him in trouble, defiant, superior, certain of his own importance. "If you think you can do better, go ahead, but don't come crying to me when you realize the internet will eat you alive. You can't please these people. They want blood, not truth." The comments section filled instantly. Some sympathized, others mocked. But the most common reaction was fatigue. "It's always about you," one person wrote. "What about them? What about the Whittakers?" Meanwhile, in Odd, West Virginia, far away from the chaos of social media, Larry and Betty were living quietly. They didn't see the comments, they didn't scroll the feeds. Their world was still the same: simple, slow, fragile. When asked about all the fighting online, Larry reportedly just shrugged. "People gonna talk," he said. "Ain't much I can do about that." Betty, ever soft-spoken, had only one thing to say: "I just want peace." And that was the tragedy of it all. The people at the center of the storm didn't even have a voice in it. While Brian and Patrick shouted across the internet, defending themselves from strangers, the family they claimed to love was still waiting for the help, the resolution, the calm that never seemed to come. As the backlash deepened, both men would face a decision that would define the rest of the story: to keep fighting the internet or finally walk away. But neither was ready to let go just yet. The pride was too strong, the audience too addicted, the cycle too familiar. The storm wasn't over. It was only gathering again. The morning after Brian's latest live, the digital world was a battlefield. Facebook groups, TikTok threads, YouTube comment sections, every corner of social media buzzed with debate, anger, and disbelief. What had started as an attempt to set the record straight had exploded into a full-blown culture war, with creators, viewers, and self-proclaimed insiders all taking sides. Brian's defenders framed him as a victim, a man unfairly targeted for trying to help. Patrick's supporters called him the only one doing real work, a truth teller surrounded by snakes. But between those camps were thousands of ordinary followers, tired of the drama yet unable to look away. Everyone agreed on one thing: it had gone too far. The call-out chain reaction. Within 24 hours, 3 smaller content creators, names barely known outside their own circles, posted reaction videos dissecting Brian's "mind your business" post. They played his words over screenshots of his past statements, pointing out inconsistencies, contradictions, and half-truths. One creator zoomed in on an older clip where Brian bragged about being in direct contact with local authorities. Another played a voicemail that, according to them, proved Brian exaggerated his involvement with the family's case. "He's not helping anyone," the creator said, voice rising. "He's inserting himself to stay relevant every time something quiets down." Here comes Brian with another Facebook sermon. Meanwhile, the family still doesn't have what they need. "You tell me who's really benefiting here." That clip, a single angry paragraph, went viral. By evening, it had 200,000 views. Brian responded, "Of course." He wrote, "Y'all can twist whatever you want, but I've got the receipts. I've helped that family more than any of you loudmouths on the internet. If that makes you mad, good, it means I'm doing something right." He ended the post with a line that would later come back to haunt him: "I don't owe anyone proof. The truth stands on its own." Patrick's silence breaks again. While Brian sparred with critics online, Patrick went quiet for a few days. No new videos, no posts, no replies. It was rare for him. The man who usually addressed everything head-on had suddenly vanished. But when he reappeared, his tone was colder, more measured, almost like a politician rehearsing his talking points. In a dimly lit video filmed inside his car, Patrick looked directly into the camera. "I don't care about clicks, I don't care about clout," he began. "What I care about is that the Whittakers are okay, and I'm not going to sit back and let a bunch of people who've never even been there tell me how I should feel." He took a breath. "People keep saying I'm using them for what fame? You think I want this kind of fame? You think it's fun being called names, getting messages all day from strangers telling me I'm evil? I don't need this, but I'm not walking away, because someone has to speak for them." The last line landed like a thunderclap. Speak for them. That was the moment that reignited the argument. Critics replayed that phrase endlessly, claiming it was proof that Patrick, too, had lost perspective, that he'd gone from helping the family to representing them, to owning their story in his own mind. The internet splits into factions. Within a week, the online conversation fractured into distinct camps. Team Patrick, supporters who saw him as a genuine man trying to help a forgotten family. They pointed to the car he bought, the money he raised, the time he spent in Odd, West Virginia. "He's doing something," they argued. "Everyone else is just talking." Team Brian, followers who viewed him as a truth-teller exposing the corruption behind the scenes. They quoted his long posts and lives like scripture. "He's right," one fan wrote. "People just can't handle the truth. They hate him because he calls it like it is." Team Leave Them Alone, the growing number of people who wanted everyone to stop. "The Whittakers don't need content," one woman posted. "They need privacy. Enough is enough." Each side had its evidence, its heroes, its villains. The conversation had stopped being about the family entirely. It had become about ownership. Who had the right to tell their story? Who had the right to care? Who had the moral high ground in a battle that was supposed to be about compassion? The Whittaker name becomes clickbait. By now, the word Whittaker had become a magnet for engagement. New creators popped up daily, each promising the truth or an update that never came. They stitched together clips, reused old footage, made dramatic thumbnails with titles like "Patrick Exposed" or "Brian's Hidden Motives Revealed." The family's name was no longer sacred, it was a brand. Larry's quiet interviews from years ago resurfaced and were repackaged with sensational headlines. Old photos of Betty circulated again, paired with captions that twisted her expressions into something tragic or shocking. Even casual observers could see the irony. The same people accusing others of exploitation were now exploiting the story themselves, just on the opposite side. Brian's breaking point. By late spring, Brian's tone had shifted from frustration to fury. He went live almost daily, lashing out at critics, doubling down on his narrative, threatening to expose the lies of other creators. "You want to play games," he shouted during one stream. "You want to talk about who's exploiting who? You think I don't know what's going on behind the scenes? You think I don't see the fake messages, the doctored screenshots y'all keep pushing, and I'll show everyone the truth." But the more he fought, the more the internet turned against him. Every word became fuel. Every angry rant was clipped, shared, dissected. People began to call it the Brian Spiral. Comment sections filled with jokes and memes. Someone even made a remix of his angry outburst, turning his shouts into a dance track. It was cruel, but the internet rarely showed mercy once it smelled blood. And Patrick, he stayed quiet through it all, until someone leaked a private message that changed everything. The leaked message. The screenshot spread like wildfire. A private conversation, allegedly between Patrick and another creator, discussing how much money certain videos about the Whittakers had earned. Patrick denied it immediately, claiming it was fake. "People can make anything up," he said. "If you believe that, that's on you." But the damage was done. The timing was too perfect, the language too familiar. Even some of his supporters hesitated. "I still like Patrick," one commenter wrote, "but this doesn't look good." "Maybe they all making money off this," said another. "Maybe nobody's innocent here." The illusion of purity, of any creator being above the chaos, had been shattered. A new kind of anger. By now, the internet wasn't just angry at individuals, it was angry at itself. Viewers began questioning their own role in the circus. Why had they been so quick to pick sides? Why had they turned someone's real life into an ongoing soap opera? "We did this," one user posted on Reddit. "We fed it every time we clicked, commented, argued. We kept it alive." It was a rare moment of self-awareness, but fleeting. Within hours, the same thread had devolved into another argument over who was the real villain. The internet wasn't ready to let go, not yet. The family watches from the shadows. In Odd, West Virginia, Betty's health was declining. Larry still worked odd jobs, doing his best to ignore the noise. When asked by a local if he'd seen any of the new videos, he just shook his head. "We don't got no internet like that," he said softly. "People keep calling though, asking questions. I don't know what to tell them." It was tragic, the world's loudest story about a family who couldn't even hear it. But in that silence, there was truth. While the internet argued over who cared most, the Whittakers were living proof that all the talking in the world didn't change much. Their lives were still the same, small, quiet, human. The feud between Brian and Patrick had now crossed a line that couldn't be undone. Reputations were crumbling, alliances breaking, and the illusion of righteousness collapsing under the weight of ego. But worse than the lies or the anger was the growing realization that the Whittakers story, once a symbol of empathy, had become the internet's favorite battleground. And soon, something even bigger was about to surface, something that would shake both men's credibility for good. The internet had turned toxic before. That wasn't new, but this time, it wasn't just noise or gossip. This time, something darker was spreading, a real, tangible distrust that had infected every corner of the Whittaker conversation. People weren't just questioning Brian and Patrick anymore, they were questioning the story itself. Were the Whittakers victims or pawns? Were Brian and Patrick allies or opportunists? Every answer led to more questions, and each question only deepened the divide. And then came the leak. The message that changed everything. It wasn't an email or a video, it was a text thread, short, informal, littered with misspellings and emojis, but the implications were explosive. Screenshots circulated in Facebook groups and Reddit threads, supposedly showing Patrick discussing profits from Whittaker-related content with another creator. One message read, "The car was good for views. The next video has to be about Brian. People love drama." Another line hit even harder. We can't just stop posting now, the audience will move on. Patrick immediately called the screenshots fake. You can make anything look real with Photoshop, he said in a late-night post, but people weren't sure what to believe anymore. His calm denial clashed with the exhaustion in his face for someone insisting on innocence. He looked guilty. Brian, of course, seized the opportunity. In a Facebook Live, he leaned toward the camera, his voice dripping with smug satisfaction. "I told you," he said, "I told you who that man was. I told you he wasn't about family, he's about fame, about clicks. I warned y'all months ago." He paused, smiling faintly. "Now look who's exposed." For a brief moment, Brian was on top again, vindicated in the eyes of his supporters, but the internet doesn't stay loyal for long. Just 2 days later, someone found his messages. Brian's turn under fire. It started with a single post, a screenshot allegedly from Brian's private group chat, in which he boasted about having control over the narrative. "Let Patrick hang himself," it read. "I'll go live after and drop the receipts. The views will explode." That one message spread faster than any of his videos. Suddenly, Brian wasn't the truth teller anymore. He was the manipulator, the schemer, the man planning outrage for engagement. The backlash was immediate. His own supporters turned on him, comment sections filled with disappointment, betrayal, rage. "You're no better than him. You said you cared about the family, but you're just playing the same game. You both disgust me." For once, Brian didn't go live, he didn't defend himself, he didn't post. Silence. For the first time since the Whittakers story had become a viral phenomenon, the two men who had controlled the narrative were suddenly losing it, slipping through their fingers as the internet devoured them both. The collapse of trust. The chaos wasn't confined to their channels anymore. Major commentary pages picked up the story. Podcasters and YouTubers, previously uninterested in the Whittaker drama, started making videos titled, "The Exploitation of the Whittakers, a Case Study in Internet Obsession." The dark side of charity content. When helping hurts. The Patrick and Brian saga. Clips of their past videos were played side by side, their contradictions laid bare. Patrick claiming, "I don't care about the money." Brian shouting, "This isn't about views." Then their leaked messages flashed on screen, undermining everything they'd ever said. Creators who once collaborated with them quietly deleted old videos or distanced themselves entirely. "I didn't know what was really going on," one said. "It just started to feel wrong." The tide had turned completely. But amidst the outrage, something unexpected happened. A handful of people began asking about the family again. Where were the Whittakers? While the internet burned itself out arguing about who was worse, the family at the center of it all had fallen silent, not online, but in real life. A local news report mentioned that Larry and Betty had been struggling to afford transportation since the car, gifted to them, had been impounded for unpaid taxes. The vehicle, it turned out, had never been properly transferred to their name. The same car that sparked months of fighting was now gone. Neighbors described seeing Larry walking miles into town for groceries. Betty, they said, rarely left the porch anymore. BJ, always unpredictable, had reportedly left for another county. But what stung most was this: not one of the people who had built their platforms around helping had shown up to fix it. Not Patrick, not Brian, not anyone. All the talking, the posting, the streaming, it had added up to nothing for the people who mattered most. Patrick's last video. 2 weeks later, Patrick reappeared. His voice was hoarse, his face drawn. The confident, sarcastic energy was gone. "I've been quiet for a reason," he said softly. "This whole thing got out of control. I thought I was helping, I really did, but it got twisted. Everything got twisted. People started talking about fame, about views, and I let it get to me. I'm sorry." He looked away from the camera. "I didn't make money off the family, I didn't, but I can see how it looked, and maybe that's just as bad. Maybe I should have walked away when it became a circus." He paused for a long time. "I'll always care about them, but I'm done. This isn't what I wanted." It was raw, honest, painful. For a brief moment, the internet seemed to forgive him, or at least, to understand. People left kind comments. "Thank you for owning up. We all make mistakes. Do better next time." But Brian wasn't moved. Hours later, he posted a video titled, "Patrick's Fake Apology. Brian's Dissent." The video opened with Brian laughing bitterly. He's sorry? He's sorry now? Where was that when he was buying cars with other people's money? He played clips of Patrick's apology, stopping every few seconds to add his commentary. "See that?" he said, pointing. "That's manipulation. That's what narcissists do. They play the victim." He spoke for over 40 minutes, dissecting every facial expression, every breath. It was cruel and it backfired spectacularly. Within hours, his comments were filled with disgust. "You're obsessed. You're proving his point. You've become everything you said you hated." One former supporter wrote, "I defended you for months. No more. This isn't advocacy, it's bullying." By the next morning, Brian's page was flooded with reports and his live videos started disappearing. Whether it was a platform issue or mass flagging, no one knew, but it felt like poetic justice. The echo of exploitation. For weeks afterward, both men faded from the spotlight. The videos slowed down, the conversations died out, and the algorithm moved on to new controversies. But the damage lingered. People began using the Whittakers as a cautionary tale, a symbol of what happens when empathy becomes entertainment. College professors cited the saga in lectures about digital ethics. Documentaries hinted at a future story exploring the fallout of online exploitation. Meanwhile, the family remained what they had always been, a mystery wrapped in poverty and silence. They had survived the world's gaze, but at a terrible cost. The final comment that said it all. Months later, buried deep under an old video, a comment appeared from an anonymous user. To read simply, "Y'all forgot this was supposed to be about love. No hashtags, no emojis, no arguments, just that one line." It didn't go viral, it didn't start another fight, but for those who saw it, it cut deeper than any expose ever could. Because in the end, that was the truth. Everyone had gone too far. They had turned human pain into content, turned compassion into competition, turned the Whittakers' lives into an ongoing series that no one had the right to direct. And when the views dried up and the noise faded, the only thing left was silence, and the quiet reminder that some stories were never meant to be told this way. Months past, the chaos that had once engulfed the internet began to fade, swallowed by the next wave of online drama. The Whittakers, once the center of the storm, had slipped quietly back into obscurity. But for those who had watched the rise and fall of Brian and Patrick, the echoes lingered. The internet had moved on, yes, but the damage remained carved into digital history. The videos were still there, buried under newer uploads. Titles about truth, justice, updates, the thumbnails with bright fonts and exaggerated faces, the countless comments, frozen in time, arguments, confessions, insults, prayers. The story had become a fossil of outrage, a relic of how far people were willing to go for attention and how easily empathy could turn into spectacle. And then, out of nowhere, Brian came back. Brian's return, a different man. It was late evening when his live stream notification popped up. For the first few minutes, no one believed it was real. The man who had once ranted daily, who had vanished without a word, now sat quietly in a dim room, looking nothing like the confident voice of months before. His tone was soft, his eyes tired. "It's been a while," he began, "a long while. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about what I did, about what I let happen." He sighed, long and heavy. "When I started talking about the Whittakers, I really thought I was helping. I thought people needed to know about them, about what they were going through, but somewhere along the line, it stopped being about them. It became about me, about proving something, about being right." He rubbed his face. "And when people tried to tell me to stop, I couldn't. I was addicted to it, to the views, to the validation. I thought I was defending the truth, but I was defending my ego. The chat was still. I said a lot of things I regret, he continued. I hurt people, I disrespected the family I claimed to care about, and for that, I'm sorry not just to them, but to anyone who watched me become something ugly. He didn't cry, but his voice cracked. You know, people say the internet isn't real, but the pain it causes, that's real. The damage it does, that's real too. The stream lasted only 12 minutes. When it ended, comments began trickling in, not angry this time, not mocking, but quiet. That took courage. Maybe you really mean it. Let's all learn from this. It wasn't forgiveness, it was something simpler, acknowledgement. For the first time, Brian wasn't trying to win, he was trying to understand. Patrick's silence and the unexpected visit. Unlike Brian, Patrick didn't make a comeback video, he didn't post or go live, his pages remained untouched, the last upload still the quiet apology he'd given months earlier. But one day, a short clip appeared on a small local YouTube channel, filmed by a visitor passing through West Virginia. It showed Patrick standing by the Whittakers' yard, talking softly with Larry. There was no camera crew, no dramatic music, no hashtags, just two men speaking quietly by the porch as Betty sat nearby, watching the clouds roll over the hills. No one knew what they said, the audio was muffled, carried off by wind, but at one point, Patrick reached into his truck, pulled out a small box, and handed it to Betty. When she opened it, she smiled, that faint, shy smile people remembered from the early documentaries. The video ended there. It lasted only 40 seconds, but it spoke louder than any of his previous posts. The internet reflects. By the end of the year, the Whittaker saga was a ghost of what it had once been. The hashtags had vanished, the gossip pages had moved on, but the story lived on in discussions about media ethics, exploitation, and the dangerous pull of parasocial connection. Podcasts dissected the phenomenon. It's a textbook example of how compassion becomes consumption. One host said, the viewers thought they were helping, but they were feeding a machine. A journalist wrote an article titled, The Whittakers and the Cost of Caring Too Publicly. In it, she described the story not as a failure of two men, but of an entire culture, one that blurred the line between empathy and entertainment. The audience wanted to feel close to something real, she wrote, but in doing so, they made it less real. The family became a mirror, reflecting everyone's curiosity, guilt, and obsession. Even universities began studying it, citing the Whittaker case as a lesson in digital ethics and emotional responsibility. The names Brian and Patrick became case studies, not villains. A quiet winter in Odd. Winter settled softly over Raleigh County. Snow dusted the roofs of the small homes, the hills turned white, and the roads grew quiet. In one of those homes, Larry and Betty went about their lives as they always had, slow, steady, private. There were no cameras, no visitors, no online chaos echoing through the walls. Neighbors said the family seemed calmer. BJ had returned to visit more often. Timmy, they heard, was doing better. No one could confirm how true any of it was, but maybe that was the point. For the first time in years, the Whittakers' lives weren't a public conversation, they were theirs again. Brian's final post. Months after his apology, Brian posted one last message, just text, black on white. No videos, no updates, no commentary, just peace. If you followed me through all that mess, I hope you take something from it. Not everything broken needs fixing in front of a crowd. Sometimes the best help is silence. It didn't go viral, it didn't trend, but people shared it quietly, like a closing chapter. Patrick's redemption. The following spring, a small fundraiser appeared online, organized by someone local in Beckley. It wasn't run by Patrick, but his name appeared in the list of donors. The note attached simply said, "For Larry and Betty, hope it helps." No fanfare, no post, no video, just a quiet gesture. And for those who saw it, that small act meant more than any speech. Because after all the chaos, the fighting, the lies and leaks, it was the simplest thing, done quietly and sincerely, that finally brought the story full circle. The moral left behind. The internet didn't learn overnight, it never does, but the Whittaker story left a scar deep enough to make people pause, even briefly, before turning someone's life into content. Creators began including disclaimers about consent and ethics. Audiences became more skeptical of charity influencers, and when people brought up the Whittakers, it wasn't just to gawk, it was to ask, what went wrong? It was a sad legacy, but an important one. A comment worth remembering. On an old video of Patrick standing outside the Whittakers' home, a new comment appeared nearly a year later. You all started out trying to help, and maybe you lost your way, but the family, they're still here. That means hope is too. No arguments followed it, no replies. Just silence. The kind of silence the Whittakers had deserved all along. Thank you for watching this video. Click here to watch another video that might interest you.